Thank you very much, Chairman Conaway, and to Ranking Member Peterson. I really appreciate that you're holding this hearing today and giving me the opportunity to say a few words about it, and I particularly appreciate that you remembered to call it the great state of Maine. Obviously this is an issue that people have been increasingly concerned about, and I've been very grateful to have a chance to work with it, and as all of you said, work across the aisle and with a whole diverse group of interests that are concerned about the fact that 40% of the food, as you mentioned, is wasted in this country. Particularly people on the Agriculture Committee know how much work goes into growing food, how much water is lost in the process of growing food, how long it has to be transported around the country, and just that gives you a sense of how much we are wasting besides the food in terms of energy and other resources in doing this. The other big concern is that we do have 50 million people in this country going hungry, and when there's confusion around date labeling or how food can be disposed of or the Good Samaritan laws that we've talked about, it just makes it that much more difficult for restaurants and retail stores to find out how to make sure that uneaten food and beyond the label food gets to those food banks and to those people in need. So that's part of what we're proposing to look at in the bill that we submitted called the Food Recovery Act. It's wonderful to see that the USDA and the EPA together have announced a food reduction goal. They did that last year, and their goal is to reduce food waste by 50% by the year 2030. So an ambitious goal, but I think also showing that there are great opportunities there. I'm fortunate enough to serve on the Agricultural Appropriations Subcommittee, so we've been looking for ways to work with them on funding areas that could make a difference in solving this problem, and also work on some of the same things with the FDA. There's certainly no single way to go about solving this problem, and I know as you dig deeper into it today and you hear from the wonderful panel that you've chosen, you'll start to hear that it's something we have to face on all fronts, from helping consumers to understand differently, giving opportunities to farmers who want to make sure food gets into the right hands, and helping retailers in particular and restaurant owners to reduce that weight or to make sure it goes places that we want. In my own state, we have a supermarket chain that is also committed to zero food waste, which means making sure everything gets sold in the store that possibly can, even if some of it looks a little ugly or misshapen, then making sure it gets to food banks and places where people are in need, and finally making sure that food that can't go anywhere else either goes to a composting facility or an anaerobic digester, because that's another big issue here is most food waste ends up in municipal landfills. And for those of you who have served on municipal government, you know that's one of the increasing costs. It also produces methane gas, which is much more toxic than many other gases that we already worry about, whereas if it's converted to compost or anaerobic digestion, we're either left with wonderful looking soil or we're producing energy with that food waste. So making sure that there are federal funds available to municipalities who want to do that is another part of this, and something that I think can certainly be dealt with in a variety of committees. Just in closing, I want to mention the one thing that Ranking Member Peterson and I were just talking about, and I'm sure all of you on the committee and most of us have experienced this problem perhaps in your own household, where you look at a package, it's got a label on it, and think, okay, well, this is probably still good, we should eat it, yet someone else in your household looks at it and says, oh, no, look at that date, we've got to throw it away. We actually submitted a bill last week with Senator Blumenthal about date labeling to try to bring some sensibility into this. And because we hear so much about the domestic disagreements that go on, we thought we should call this the Domestic Harmony Bill to reduce some of those issues that people face. But basically, manufacturers have joined us. We were endorsed in that bill by Campbell Soup and Nestle's, and a variety of other companies have already come forward because they find it confusing too. Basically, those labels, for the most part, don't have a uniform or scientific basis. They may represent something to that individual company, but it really doesn't mean you can't eat that food. So our idea is to ask the USDA and the FDA to work together to create a label, one that says expires on, for those foods that really do have a safety issue, and you should know when it's too late to eat it. And the other one would just say best if used by. So that tells you that that bag of crackers will be best if you eat it by a certain date, but nothing's going to happen to you if you eat it a month later, or maybe even the next season when you return to your, your summer cabin, or you find it, in a box that you never unpacked. chances are that's going to be perfectly good food. So we'd like to bring some sensibility to that. It would be great for manufacturers. It would take some of the stigma out of how that food gets donated. And in fact, there are 20 states around the country that prohibit food donations if that date is passed. And if you think about it, we're keeping 20 states away from giving that food to people in need, and it's a completely arbitrary date. So it seems like that's one of the ones that would be extremely cost effective. It would create much less waste, something that most of us agree on, and you'll find most of the manufacturers and others agree on it as well. So thank you very much for giving me a moment to open this up today. Thank you for taking on this topic. I look forward to working with you in any way I can, and thank you for giving me a little bit of nostalgia to return to the committee, which I served on in my early days, and truly enjoyed working with all of you and being in this room.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for being here. Appreciate your comments this morning and for your leadership and getting this initiative started, and we'll look forward to pitching in with you on I guess you shouldn't say pitching in, but nevertheless helping with reduction in food waste. So.